So much work gone into this, and I think it is. I honestly think it was beyond the expectations of the Justice Committee when we did our piece of work. I think you've managed to go much further than we expected, and I really genuinely want to congratulate you on this piece of work, which I know has the opportunity to develop further and further throughout the different legislative stages. In particular, I'd like to congratulate you on the pieces in relation to, the section, Chapter 3 in relation to the notifications, the obligations not to offer to inducements, to not to participate children, to be involved with sponsorship provisions, and indeed similar in Chapter 4 and Chapter 5. Like it really does go very, very far. I do also agree with the previous speaker, Deputy Gannon, in relation to how it might go further in relation to sponsorship and advertising, and highlight that, of course, children, as we conceive children up to 18, but as you and I spoke about in the Justice Committee very recently in relation to young people generally and how the brain develops up to 25. I know that you're considering, for example, youth justice in that context up to the age of 25, and how a person is still very considerably under the influence of suggestive material up and potentially up to that stage. It's very difficult, of course, because you have to cut the line at being a child somewhere. But I do think it's people, particularly young men, the research shows, can remain very vulnerable up to that stage. And so I just like to highlight that, as other people who have worked in gambling addiction have also highlighted. It is not, of course, me saying that based on my own knowledge uniquely. There was a couple of points that I just wanted to highlight from the committee recommendations. We had a very extensive engagement, as the Minister will know, with representatives from the gambling industry. In many ways, it was a disappointing sort of engagement. We were proactively questioning in relation to self-exclusion, the management of companies, in terms of tracking people whom they felt may have difficulties, who had identified as having difficulties, and how that was being managed. And many of the responses that we got focused on the UK operation rather than the Irish operation, which is obviously insufficient for our purposes. And obviously, some of the companies did come back and provide better information, but it was striking to me as a member of the committee and as Vice Chair of the Justice Committee quite how ill prepared I felt they were for that line of questioning, considering that's what the point of the bill is to do. Quite how defensive they were in relation to it, and certainly you did not get the sense that this was something that they were proactively managing, that this was something that they were coming across the table to explain to us all of the measures of safety that they had taken. I note we had the National Lottery regulator in front of the Public Accounts Committee. The matter came up in that context also there 2 weeks ago, and we were told that the National Lottery had erred also in a related way, where they had contacted, there was a number of people who'd self-excluded from using National Lottery products, which of course are just gambling products, that they had self-excluded, and I believe 48 of them had then been contacted, having self-excluded by the National Lottery. The National Lottery regulator imposed no sanction on the National Lottery other than noting it in their annual report, which they considered a sanction, and I do not. But we followed up with questions in relation to the scale of people who had, within an Irish context, self-excluded from National Lottery. And what it appears that there were in 2020 1,500 exclusions during 2020 and 1,300 exclusions during 2021, and that's just in relation to National Lottery products. So I raise it, A, to highlight the Irish context, and B, to show that the National Lottery is very much a gambling product as well. Having had that engagement with the National Lottery regulator, I was then struck, as Deputy Gannon has said, really by the scale of advertising that they and other companies engage in particular during the toy show. I don't know if Minister, I imagine that you were busy with the gambling bill at that stage or other bills at that stage, but I did watch the toy show, and I was genuinely struck by how at every ad break, it appeared to me, there was an ad with two people passing over a National Lottery ticket as a Christmas present. And it was one of the first times that it became so obvious to me, the scale of advertising just with the lottery in itself, and having had that recent engagement. So just to highlight that, there's a couple of obviously, there's a and the Minister will forgive me, I don't have the technical phrase for this, but there is a betting product where you can bet on the outcome of the National Lottery. Irrespective of my criticism of the National Lottery, there is no good, I believe, can come from that, because at least with the National Lottery you have the good causes provisions and you do have the funds being transferred in relation to that. But if I could highlight that to the Minister, I think there is some value in the National Lottery version, and that's utterly undermined in that context or by that. If I could just say, if the Minister will just forgive me, just I have the report to hand. Yeah, the other piece that I think is relevant is relation to the advertising spend is it's not clear to me. One of the things that came up again with the National Lottery context was there's a provision for unspent or unawarded prizes, and the licence provides that they should be redistributed to other prize funds and may also be used for advertising. And what we had found was that, in fact, the inverse was true, that 98% of that funding, which I think was about 122 million, had been used for additional advertising and a very small amount used for additional prizes. And it occurred to me that actually we don't have visibility that I'm aware of the actual advertising spend in different forms of media. What's the actual advertising spend of a lottery product, whether National Lottery or otherwise, with RTE, for example? What's the actual advertising with a particular group of newspapers, local radio or whatever else? And is there any capacity, or what capacity is there for mischief in that regard in relation to reporting of anything to do with any of those products or companies? And I think it would be a very interesting exercise, Minister, if that data may already be available to you, but I think if not, it would certainly be a very, very interesting piece of research to come up with. One of the pieces that, in relation to whether or not advertising can be banned more broadly, we were told in front of the committee that if gambling advertisements were banned, it would result in the closure of more retail betting shops. We were told that almost 50% of the network of betting shops in Ireland had closed in recent time, and that in turn would push customers towards other avenues of gambling and potentially unlicensed operators. I have no sympathy whatsoever with that argument, Minister, I just think it's important to put that on the record. We heard similar arguments in respect of smoking bans and other things. So, for example, how the sky would fall down if these different things were done by the Irish state. The Irish state can, of course, do these things and can go further, and indeed you have gone in the bill. But I just wanted to highlight that to you, that you should have no fear in continuing to go with the prohibition or regulation of advertising in every context, and no fear of the shops closing, I think. Thank you.